That was unexpected. Let me quickly show the opener and everything so that we get everything sorted out here. See you in a second, everyone. And here we are again.
Officially.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, technical problems do happen, to the best. So how is everyone this beautiful Thursday after the snowstorm we had over here? I was shoveling a lot of snow yesterday.
Oh, really? Did you?
Yeah, about 60 centimeters of wet snow. My snowblower, it made up for its cost just in one day. I had to move tons of snow. But yeah,
that's great to hear. Happy New Year, everyone! Welcome to the first Ask the Trainer stream of the year 2024.
Fantastic. And I'm exceptionally unprepared for today, but we'll definitely show some interesting stuff. Let's go through the housekeeping quickly. And if you want to see what events are happening now or in the future, go to the Maxon.net events page, and it's got all the stuff here, all the videos, all the events that are happening live and recorded and so forth. Now, of course, visit the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, where all the videos we do live, all the shows we do live, will be hosted, recorded, with timestamps provided kindly by Dr. Sassy on the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. You can always watch them live on the Maxon YouTube channel as well, but for recordings, you have to go to the Maxon Training Team channel. And of course, visit the Maxon ZBrush channel as well to see fantastic content on how to use this absolutely amazing, artist-friendly masterpiece of software called ZBrush. If you're interested in getting certified as a user or as a trainer, go to the certifications page. And if you go to the Cinema 4D Pro user certification and click on the topics, it will give you a bunch of topics, a list of topics and small breakdowns, which even if you're not really interested in getting certified, although I do suggest people get on this journey of certification, and you will find a very good guide of what we feel are the most important topics that will make you become a better Cinema 4D user. And of course, to thank you as a token of gratitude for your participation in these shows, go to the Maxon merch store and you can grab a t-shirt for free. You only pay for postage and folding. And I think the code for the month of January 2024, it's already 24 years after flying cars were promised. I think it's Toonie Graphics, but Jonas is going to paste it down there. And
that is correct.
Of course, do not forget to visit cineversity.maxon.net to find about 6 trillion tutorials, or even to visit theoldcineversity.com. And yeah, I think if I didn't forget anything with the housekeeping, I'm sure Jonas will remind me. I'm going to hand it. This is something I may or may not show. I'll think about it. I'm going to hand the screen to Jonas and the Ring of Power.
Yes, thank you very much. So during the last Ask the Trainer session, we had a question. Well, actually, it wasn't really a question, but a disco mirror ball lights creating reflections on a wall as a real-world scene from Halal Studio. I hope you're here today, so you can watch what I prepared here. So first, I want to show you how you can render caustics inside of Redshift, because that's actually what you would need to do to make it very realistic, to render it realistically. But I'm gonna spoiler it already. Whenever you can avoid rendering caustics, try to avoid it, because it's they are, especially in a disco ball scenario, I think they are pretty hard to control, and you have way more controllable ways of creating convincing and plausible renders. So yeah, caustics. What you see here, that is a caustic. It's pretty much the reflection of the light source in something that is reflecting or refracting. So this little shape that you see here, that looks pretty cool, this is a caustic. So let me show you how you can do that. I'm gonna go to this scene, and when I start rendering this, give it a second, then you see there are no caustics. So one thing that you definitely need to know is caustics by default in Redshift, when you open up the render settings, they are activated. So they are already enabled. So why don't we see any caustics? There are a few reasons for that. So first of all, in a light source, did I say light source instead of light source? That's actually funny.
Yes, light source. That'll be tasty.
I'm gonna have that for dinner tonight. Good. When you go to a light's details tab and you go down here, you can activate caustic photons. So what will actually happen is that the light more or less will shoot photons into the scene, and then these photons will reflect and refract and create these cool looking effects. However, now that I activated this, nothing is happening yet. We cannot see these. Caustics in Redshift will only render in bucket mode. So if we go to bucket mode, there's a chance that we can see it now. And now you can see that it's already preparing some sort of a photon cache. But still, when we have a look at this, it's going to take a little longer here. So that's one of the downsides of caustics. Of course, it's going to take longer to render. But you can still not see these caustics here. So what I did to make them visible was I right-clicked the tube, the one object that I want to reflect light so that it's that you can see it in the caustics. Is I went to render tags, redshift object tag, and then under visibility, I chose override and cast caustic photons. And once I activated that, let's wait for the cache here. Now you can see that these photons are rendering. And it's going there, it's getting there, right? But you can see that it's incredibly noisy. So what we can do here is we can increase the count of photons. So let's go to the light source, to the area light, and let's just add under details, of course. Let's just add a 0 here so that we are not going with 100,000 photons, but with 1 million. And then let's also, just in case, bring this maximum of photons up as well. Let me see if that's already doing something. Yeah, it's getting better. Let me play with this value a little bit. Yeah, maybe let's add another 0. So this will add render time, of course, but now you know which steps to take to render caustics. So one is activate caustics here in the light. Second is activate bucket mode in rendering. There we go. And 3 is add the redshift tag here, the redshift object tag, and activate cast caustic photons. So 3 places where you have to do that, where you have to activate caustics so that you can see them in a on a table or whatever, like here. But this is how you would do it. But as you already saw, this added a lot of render time. So my recommendation is whenever you can avoid using caustics, avoid it. There are a lot of techniques that you can use, for example, with lights and gobos, where you can just fake caustics and nobody will ever spot a difference. Okay, so with that being said, let's create a disco ball, because that was the actual question. So this was just like the preamble, or whatever you want to call it, to tell you that you don't have to use caustics for that. So let me create a new scene, and let's create a disco ball. Maybe let me have a look here. Disco ball. Let's just search for images here. So there we go. What do we have here? So basically, it's just spheres with square or at least rectangular mirrors on it. And these mirrors are arranged in circles around the sphere. So there are a few things that you can do to create that. I used maybe a little bit of a hacky way, but it got me there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clone a few circles so that they are in a circular in a spherical shape, and then I'm going to clone the mirrors onto these splines then. So let's start by creating a sphere, and I'm going to bring this up. So if I press NB to bring up the line shading, you can see the challenge here already. So in theory, we have all these lines that we need, but the segmentation vertically here is the same all over the place. And that means that up here, these polygons are far from being square. So in order to get a distribution that is working here, we need to find another way than just cloning onto polygons or points. So step one, let's create a circle, and let's align it so that it's lying on the floor. Let's make the radius 100. And now you can see, well, you can see it a little bit here, this line. I'm going to make it an ellipse in the beginning because I want to make sure that you can then see the rotation later. And I'm going to bring up the number of intermediate points so that it's smoother. Okay, we are working with a radius of 100 here. So let me move this circle down by 100. Once you started dragging and dropping or dragging, then you can hold down the shift key, and then you can snap to 5 centimeter steps here. So now we are basically on the bottom of the sphere with the alignment. And I'm going to clone this circle. So let me create a cloner. I'm going to hold down the Alt key so that I'm going to create the cloner as a parent. All right. And then I'm just going to set this to linear, and let me bring this up a little bit, maybe to 40 or so, 40 clones. And you can see that, these are here. I'm going to set the offset to 0. So each of the clones is now in the very same position. The only thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to play with the heading, and you can see that you can create a pretty cool effect here, by the way. So let me just bring this up a little bit, maybe like so. And now let's make it so that these circles, well, right now they are still ellipses. Let me bring them back to circles. I just wanted to have ellipses so that you can see that there is a rotation with each clone. But now we need a way to offset these clones that we have. And I'm going to do that by using a step effector. And the step effector is pretty cool here. So this is my my step effector for the circles, step, and I'm going to call it Y, so that we know that we're going to control the Y position here. I'm not going to control scale, only position. And when I move up here, you can see, okay, if I type in 200, that's the height of the whole sphere. Then that's also the total height of all of these clones. Great. So this is step one. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to distribute them along the y-axis so that it makes sense later in a circular shape, because we want the distances between these circles to be the same all around the sphere. And yeah, if I just scaled them here, the distances between the spheres, between the splines, would be much bigger here and much smaller here. So what can we do? And that's a cool thing about the step effector, that we have this spline here. So what we can do is we can control the distribution here using the spline. And because we have presets, I'm going to load a preset. And the one that we need here is Easy Ease. So let's do that. Double click that. And now you can see, okay, we have bigger distances here and smaller distances here. And the good thing is that these are exactly the ones that we need. Now, from here, there are actually two ways of scaling these so that they are at least close to the surface. One is the formula effector. This way you can make it super accurate. But I'm just going to use a second step effector. So let me create a copy of that simply by control dragging and dropping. And this one is the scale. All right. We don't want to affect the position here. We only want to affect the scale, and we want to affect it in a way that it's -1 at its maximum. Nothing is happening right now. Why? Because I just created a duplicate of the first one, and this is why it is not assigned here in the Effectors tab of the cloner. So let me do that now, and suddenly you can see that something is happening. Okay, let me make the sphere invisible for a second, and let's have a look at the step effector. So now again, with this line, we can adjust the scaling here. So let me load a preset. What we could do, for example, is we could start with a gauze. That's looking quite cool. It's not where we want it to be. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click into the spline UI here and just flip this vertically. And now suddenly we have this. And then what we can do is we can play with these. And as you can see, okay, we are getting close here. I'm pretty sure that there is a 100% mathematical way how we can make this exact. But, we are visual people, and sometimes we are too lazy to do the math. And that's the way that I'm going to show here. So here we go. I'm going to unfold this Spline UI because then I have access to the tangent values here. So I'm going to set both to 0. And for this point, I'm also going to set this to 0. And then there's just a tiny little bit that we need to change in here. It's already looking pretty circular. But when I enable the sphere here, you can see, okay, up here, there's a little bit of an offset. Not that you would ever notice that, but it is there. And if you just reduce this here by a little bit, then you pretty much get there, right? So I would say this is close enough. Nobody's ever gonna notice that. So let's have a look. This is our circle. And the cool thing is that the distances between these lines here are now the same. And that's what we need. Okay, so the next step for me is to clean up a little bit. So I'm gonna create a null, call this circulus. and make everything a child of that except for the sphere. And the last thing I need to do in order to make this work, or to make it work that I can clone onto these, is I need to throw the cloner into a connect object. So let's do this. I hold down the Alt key here, and it's automatically going to be created as a parent. I'm going to untick weld just in case. And yeah, now we have one object that has all these splines in there, and that is fully procedural. All right, so let's continue with the next one. I'm going to rename this here circles. Okay, next step, let's create a cube. And let's make it smaller, maybe 5 by 5 by 1 or so. So this can be our starting point. And I'm going to clone this. Again, I hold down the Alt key while the cube is selected, and I create the cloner. This way it's going to be created as a parent. And with the cloner selected, I go to the Object tab, and clone mode is going to be set to object. And now I'm just going to use the connect here, and I can clone onto these splines now. So if I use the cloner instead, you can see, well, right now it is working, but there was something weird going on up here. So here you can see that these clones up here, they are not really working because they are being scaled down together with the circles. But if I use the connect, you can see that they are all the same size. Okay, so that's looking good. I'm going to set the distribution of that cloner, and these are going to be the mirrors. I'm going to set the distribution to step. And I'm going to bring down the step to, let's say, 6. And suddenly we have a huge array of these mirrors. And this is a good starting point. Now we need to make sure that they are all pointing outwards or inwards. Doesn't matter in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a target effector. Let's create the target effector. And there we go. Here it is. The target effector is exactly in the center here, and that's why everything is now looking at this target effector. I could move this around, then all these mirrors would move as well, but I want it to be in the center, and this way it works already. Perfect. So now's the time where we can adjust the sizes a little bit. So actually what we need is here in the cloner, we need a little bit more distance, maybe even more. Let's set it to 8. And we then need to scale up the cubes. And let's just bring them to this size. And it's looking quite good. I mean, up here we have a little bit of overlap. Yeah, I would just leave it as is for now. I mean, more elegant would be to have a cloner per row, because then you could define the clone count and avoid the overlaps. But we are going to look at this sphere from the side, and this is already like looking good. We don't see the overlaps up here. So sometimes you only have to model in a way that it's looking good, but so that it's not realistic. Okay, let me activate the sphere again, and let's just have a look at what we have. I'm going to add another null. I'm going to call it mirrors, and throw these in here. Okay, and now maybe let me save this. That could be a good idea. I'm going to leave it at untitled 3. So the next thing I can do is create some materials. I'm just going to create 2. The first one is going to be pretty dark, and maybe less reflection weight. And we're gonna put that onto the sphere. And the second one is our mirror material. So I'm gonna bring the color, the base color up, and the metalness up, and the roughness down. So here we go. And I'm gonna add that to the mirrors now, and suddenly you can see, okay, we have that disco ball. We can add a little bit more detail here. So what I always like is a little bit of imperfections, and we can start doing that in the modeling here, simply by adding a random effector. So let me add a random effector here. I'm going to hold down the control key now, because that will just create the random effector on the same hierarchical level instead of on top here. Good. And I'm going to set it up a little bit. So I don't need position. What I need is rotation. And we're just going to rotate everything by, let's say, 2 degrees. And now you can see that, yeah, there's a little bit of imperfection going on, just enough to make it visible, but not enough so that you cannot see what's being reflected in here. Okay, and now we get to the fake reflections that are supposed to be on the wall at some point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a copy of that whole mirrors null and call it lights. And in here, I'm going to replace the cube with an area light. So let me first go to the object tab and adjust the area light a little bit. So we need it to be way smaller. I can't remember what the size of these was. So let's say 7. So let's go to the area light and let's say 7 by 7 centimeters. And then there is this spread parameter. And the spread parameter is telling us that there is like a maximum spread in the angle of the light. So it's going to be spread in 180 degrees from the area light. If we bring down the spread to 0, it will just be a parallel light, which is pretty cool. But I'm going to start with something like 0.05 and then clone the whole thing just by throwing it into the cloner. So what you can see now is that we're definitely going to run into a problem here, because the lights are also in the center of these mirrors. So we need to find a way to push them outwards. And how can we do that? Of course, with a plane effector. So I'm going to select the mirrors cloner here. In this case, it's the lights cloner. And I'm going to hold down the control key, add a plane effector. There we go. So now all the lights have been moved in Y direction. That's not what I want. I want to move them in Z direction. So in the MoGraph context, Z is like moving the clones away or towards the surface. Okay, our thickness here in the cube is almost 1.5. So let me move these out by just -1 should be enough. Okay. And I'm also going to rotate all of them by 180 degrees so that the lights are pointing outwards. Right now they are pointing to the inside because the target effector is just making them pointing inside. So let's do this. Now they are all pointing to the outside. And yeah, now we can have a look at what this will look like. So let me add a wall simply by creating a plane. Z direction is fine. Let's move this to the side here and maybe make it a lot bigger. And let's have a look. I'm going to render this now. It might be pretty bright, but let's have a look. There we go. So yeah, A, it's way too bright. But one thing that you can already see is that this part here of the sphere is looking pretty cool already. So of course it's a reflecting object. So at some point we also need a dome light in here. Another thing we need to do is we need to bring down the intensity. So let's go way lower here. And yeah, this approach also takes a little longer to render because there are so many lights in the scene. But it's very controllable. So let me make it even less bright. Something like this, maybe. Let's see. Let's wait for the rendering. Okay, I think I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine with is the spread. So let me bring that down maybe to 0.01. This will make these lights here way sharper. We can also move the plane a little bit away from this sphere, like so. Yeah, here you can see that it's way sharper now. Maybe that's too sharp. So let's go with 0.02 instead. I think that's fine. And for this scenario, at this moment, we actually don't need global illumination. So let's just disable that to save maybe one or the other second in render time. Okay, and from here we can colorize the light and so on. So everything will work from here. We can even clone multiple lights. One thing that I do want to show is when you want to control the brightness of the light. So let's say you want to have another light source here shining onto the sphere or the disco ball. Then, yeah, you might these back mirrors not to, or these backlights not to cast any light. And by using an approach with two lights in here, one that has both with the same parameters pretty much, but one with zero intensity, then you can use blend mode here in the cloner to affect this whole thing using another plane effector with a field. So let me just show you that. I'm gonna disable the rendering for now. And I'm gonna add another plane effector. Let's do this. I'm gonna place that here, and this is the light intensity. And in here, I don't wanna affect the position, but the modify clone, right? And now I can use a plane effector, for example, place it here. I think that's a good one, good position. I can start this rendering again, and hopefully I didn't make any mistake. Let's just put the linear field here. Okay, something is not working here. Let me double check. So this one is at modify clone. That should be good. No position, no rotation, no scale. Let me just swap these two. Does that make a difference? Is it now showing the lights? That's interesting. Okay. There we go. Okay, the lights are here. And here in effectors, we have the plane light intensity. That's good. Here we are set to blend. So actually that should work if I'm not mistaken. Let's move the linear field to here to just see if that works. Give it a second. That doesn't seem to do anything, so it might be the correct side. the one that is bringing up the intensity.
Could you refresh your render view?
Yeah, let me have a look at something else as well. Okay, so this should work. So let me restart this and also just refresh. That's interesting. That is interesting. What did I do different to before? That is the question now.
I'm trying to figure out what could be going on. You're blending the two lights. They only have one parameter difference.
Yes, then exactly.
Hide the linear field correctly. Well, if you turn off the linear field, it should...
Oh, that's the point. Oh. Thanks. So the linear field is not being applied here. So I forgot to apply this because I created the linear field using this button instead of in here. And now it should make a difference. There we go.
There you go.
There we go. And now we can make this a little bit bigger, and we can also place that a little bit more in the back. And then if we had another light, for example, we could easily just make this field or the whole effector point towards the light. That's actually a pretty cool thing. I'm going to show you how to do this. So here we go. Maybe let's put the linear field here. And I'm just going to create another area light. I'm gonna set this one to area shape disk, and let's make the disk a little bit smaller, something like 50, and just move it out. Okay, and then I'm also going to reduce the spread here already, and I'm going to make this point towards the disco ball. So in this case, let's just go with a sphere as the target object. And there we go. So now it's pointing towards the sphere. And the other thing that we can do, yeah, that's working. The other thing that we can do is we can make this effector with the field as a child point towards the light. The thing is now, if we use the target tag, this wouldn't work because the target tag is always going to target to Z, plus Z direction. But right now, what we need is plus X to be targeted to the light. So instead of using the target effector from the animation tags, we could use from the rigging tags the constraint tag. And the constraint tag has a mode that is called Aim. We're going to activate that and go to the Aim tab. And here we can define the axis. That's not possible in the target tag, but here we can. So let's make this X. And then we're going to target this light. And suddenly you can see that that the setup is always pointing towards the light source. Yeah, so that is pretty cool. And the last thing that I may show you here in this scenario is maybe just to enable a little bit of fog. So everything you need to do to enable fog inside of Cinema 4D with Redshift is to create a Redshift environment. And every light that has a contribution, a volume contribution, like for example, when I go to the details, you can see there is a volume contribution here. If that is set to anything other than 0, you will see this light in the volume then. So let's try this. Let me render this. And of course, we have to wait a little bit again. And it is working already. It's a little bit bright. Well, actually, it is way too bright. So I'm going to go to the environment. And a good way to reduce the brightness here is just to bring down the value here to make this whole thing darker. Let's try this. And if you have a light that you don't want to be contributing to the volume, then you just go to the light itself and bring down the volume slider to 0. So here we are in a range that I quite like. We could make this light here blue as well, like so. And yeah, then this is the way. This is how I set up the disco ball.
All right, since I've got you there, all right, let's try the following thing. Remove the linear field.
Yeah.
Remove that linear field.
Completely remove it?
Yeah, just delete it.
Okay.
And
well,
delete
I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to hide it.
Okay. Delete one of the lights.
Which one?
The second one.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just delete one of the lights.
Okay, that's the one that... Okay.
Yeah, I want you to delete the one that doesn't have much intensity. So what you could do now is you can use your plane effector with a shader field and add an image. And you need to do one thing with your light in order for the light to assume the color. Or you have it in blend mode. And that is, you look at the light, it says, if you select your light, after you've done with this.
Okay, so plane light color. In here, in the parameters, we are gonna affect color, I assume.
Yep.
Fields color.
Good.
Okay.
And add a shader effector to that plane effector.
Okay.
And drag an HDR in the.
You mean a shader field?
A shader field.
Yeah. Okay. Shader field. Where is it? There we go.
And go and add in there an image from your asset manager. Get an HDR and drag it in there. Let's say you using an image to, light your disco. For the younger ones, disco was a place where people used to dance.
I'm going to use this one because this seems to be more colorful than others.
Yeah, just drag it on your little shader.
There we go. Just dragging and dropping it in.
You have to select the light.
You
have to select the light. And look at the first parameter under the area light. What does that say? It says...
blend object color.
Yep. If you click that, then to the color that the light has, MoGraph is going to apply the effector color.
Let's have a look. The cool thing with that is that with this being enabled, I could now, again, make a copy of this, and I can combine the two, right?
Yes. Providing everything else is set, you should see each light emit with the value of whatever the shader effector is picking up. In UV space, that is.
That is cool. Okay, so
the blend color is what allows MoGraph to control the color of the light.
Okay, I'm gonna switch off the environment for now.
And make the light white. So that means that it's going to blend whatever color is on top of it. So it doesn't...
Okay, so that didn't work. Why? Light color is in here.
You have blend mode on the cloner? Maybe
I have blend mode here.
That is... well, you don't need blend mode. You just need the proper iterate mode. I don't know if it makes it... it shouldn't make a difference. To be honest, And did you enable the color in your plane effector?
The color is set to field color, if I remember
No.
correctly.
You have values. You need color. Go to your plane effector fields list and activate the color.
Oh, right. Yeah, there we go.
And that should colorize your lights if everything else is in place. My monitor, it's quite low resolution and far away. So in theory, you should get colorization.
That didn't make a difference.
It didn't make a difference.
It did. Yeah.
Oh, it did.
So maybe
this whole thing was just to demonstrate that as far as the light is concerned, when you click the blend object color, then MoGraph is the driver of that, of the color of the light.
Okay, let me create a random field here, and let's make this random field, this randomness a little bit bigger, the noise pattern. And let me go to color remap and set the remap to gradient, the color remap. And let me just add a preset.
Yeah.
So there we go. Let me use this one here, Rastafari. And let's see what's happening.
There you go.
There you go. That is cool. That is cool.
Yeah. Blend.
What I really like about these live streams is that we learn something. At least I do. So let me enable this again. We don't need the shader field for now anymore. But now everything should be working. Ah, right. So now we are not in blend mode anymore. Let's see if it still works in blend mode, because if it doesn't work in blend mode, then we cannot combine the two. But if it does, that is looking good. That is looking good. I think I now just need to invert this, and then it should work as expected. Fingers crossed. There we go.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. That is a pretty good one. That is a pretty good one that I really didn't know.
Good.
Cool. Very
Good.
cool. Very cool.
So we had a couple of questions in the comments section. I'm going to disappoint some people. So one question from Myron is, I have a flag setup that uses the same texture in 4 different materials. Is there a way to link those 4 material texture nodes to one texture node, so I only have to update the file once? And the answer is no. If you have 4 distinct materials and you want to use the same texture in all 4, if it's a texture, the only thing you want, or a noise or a specific shader, the answer, unfortunately, is no, unless I'm about to learn something. But that is not something we can do. Anything I don't know, Jonas?
That is a good question. That is a good question. Oops. Let me go here.
As far as I know, we can't. It's one of the things our node system cannot do, is reference the same shader across many networks.
Oh, I'm just seeing that Halal Studio is here again.
Yes.
So asking the same question, and here's your answer.
Yes. Right,
Okay.
think about it. Let's check a few more questions down the line. Mark is asking, can you demonstrate the field force blending and masking modes when using multiple objects in a field force? Has changed since R21. I've not found a good demo. I don't know exactly what you mean when you say it has changes since R21. Yes, some things potentially have been fixed. If you have an example of what you're trying to achieve, that will make it much easier for us to understand what the potential problem or what would be. In terms of how they blend, these are vectors, they're directions, and depending on the mode you have surface and all that. Let's see if I have something. Oh, I've got something. Let me just put this. This is just a field force where we have a sphere and a cube in both in surface mode. I've made these invisible, and for the surfaces, it's generating the various directions. And when the two surfaces meet, it just creates a linear blend between the vectors that go in one direction and the vectors that go in another direction. I'm not exactly sure, because the masking, you need to go to the fields here and do the masking. So if I get a linear field, I can mask whatever the product of the field list in the object tab is, and this changes the length, the magnitude, as we call it, of the vector. It will be great. You can DM me at NosemanGR on Twixer and show me what the problem is, what you see, what the expectation is, so I can get a more concise answer for you. I guess you're trying to do something with particles or something like that, but if you're a bit more specific, we'll be able to attack this. I have another question from Symphoniac. How to make a good explosion at the end of a barrel with a muzzle brake with Pyro? Well, I wouldn't use Pyro. I don't think many people use Pyro for these kind of things. We have the Bang plugin, I think. It's part of the Red Giant suite, if I'm not mistaken, Jonas.
Yeah, it's part of VFX.
VFX suite. That does really interesting, even 3D muzzle flashes and all that. And I think it supports, again, what are they called? It supports, wait a minute, I forgot the terminology. Yeah, the muzzle brake, right? Sorry about that. I'm not very familiar with weapons. Now, if you definitely want...
It's a good thing.
Yeah, I would guess. If you do want to do something like that, you do have to increase your resolutions quite a bit and slow down your speeds potentially. And then, because everything that's extremely fast is very difficult to replicate, because this is a very small but extremely intense explosion. That's why it's better to do it in post, because this happens over a couple of frames, right? And with the simulations, it's difficult to get those kind of speeds. It's like simulating cloth and wanting a piece of cloth to be traveling at, let's say, 200 miles an hour and all that. You get all sorts of problems. You may be able to slow it down. So do a Pyro without any gravity effect or any buoyancy, and slow it down so you get 90, 100 frames, and then you can use that, compress it down to get something that looks a bit better. But I wouldn't suggest, if you want to do muzzle flashes, to do them using Pyro. If you do have an example that requires Pyro, you're trying to do some sort of slow motion stuff and all that, again, please send me some sort of file and we can take a look at this independently. I think Ron Morrison's question about the viewport resolution was answered.
Well, I have something here to show it again.
You can
just, yeah. So it was specifically about redshift materials, right? So when you create a material, redshift material, here you can already see I'm in the viewport tab here, and all the stuff is there actually. I'm just dragging and dropping a file on here so that we can really see it. So here you can see that the resolution is quite bad, but when I select the material and go to viewport and bring the texture preview size up to something else, something higher, it does have an effect, definitely.
A note
so this
for,
is how you would do it.
Yeah, just a note for everyone that uses Cinema 4D standard material as well. The no scaling, which in Cinema 4D standard material gives you the full resolution, doesn't work the same way in a redshift material. It will give you the default. It will give you the default that the settings have.
Yep.
Yeah. So you have to go and define the actual resolution.
Exactly. Okay.
Fields and so Mark, don't worry. I was referring to the folders and sublists in the field force object tab. I will need a file. For that. So yeah, hit me up on Twitter, or you can email AskTheTrainer@maxon.net. And if it's something we can show in the next show, or if you contact me directly, I will give you some sort of response, or maybe even this can find its way in a quick tip or something. One thing you need to remember is that a lot of the tutorials we do, quick tips, and the content we produce comes from your questions. Scott's question: when will the multi-shader be updated to the new node system? We do not know. Even if we do know, we can't tell. Do you have another more precise answer about that?
I don't. But using, well, the functionality is at least partly there with a shader switch, isn't it?
Yeah, one of the ways you could do it. I want to quickly show something.
Yeah, so there is a shader switch node, and you can have different shaders in here, and then use MoGraph, like a user data tag, user data node to drive the shader, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. What you do need to do is, because the shader selector is an integer, so 0 would select the top shader, 1 would select the second shader, third, and so forth. Whereas MoGraph MoData is normalized from 0 to 1. So if you have 10 different clones, the first clone is going to get 0, the second one 0.11, 0.22, 0.23, and so forth. You just need to change range to the cloner count in order for you to produce from a number from 0 to 1 to produce a number from 0 to how many clones you have. And that will allow you.
Let's at least try to do this.
Yeah.
That's what we are here for. So I just created this shader switch here. And let me create 3 planes using a cloner. Did I say 3? I meant 9. Okay. By the way, if you didn't know that, if you are in the scale tool and you hold down the 7 key, you can scale the cloner without scaling the clones. So the clones are going to stay the same size. If I don't hold down the 7 key, I scale this as a whole. If I hold down the 7 key, I only scale the cloner, but not the clones. Okay, so let's have a look here. We're going to use the user data, integer user data. And which one are we going to use? The MoGraph object ID?
Yeah, that will give you, depending on how many clones you have. The first one is 0, the second one 0.1, and it goes on up to the count. You can use a random effector and randomize the clones, and that will.
So I just control-clicked this little circle here so that I get this input here on the shader switch. And now let's just have a look if that works. Oh, look at this. Okay, cool. So this is, in theory, working. So we have 3 different ones. What I need to do here, actually, I think, is to throw in a modulo. So the problem right now is that we only have 9 slots here, right? Or 10 slots. Let's see if an integer, if a modulo would really allow us to just cycle between these 3 so that our effect will work. So I'm gonna search for a mod. This is the mod. The modulo is one of my favorite functions in node-based systems. What it's basically doing is it's dividing the input by a number you define, in this case 3, because we have 3 textures. But what it's giving you back is not the result, like ID divided by 3, but it's gonna give you the remainder. And by using the remainder, you will create a sequence. So now, in theory, I would have a sequence of 1, 2, 3, or 0, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. In this case, unfortunately, oh yes, it does work. So yeah, we have 3 shaders here. We are grabbing the MoGraph object ID, and we're putting that into the modulo. We are dividing, let's say 0 by 3 equals 0, and the remainder is 0. Then we divide 1 by 3 equals 0, and the remainder is 1, and so on. And this way we create a sequence of 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2 as the output. This is what the modulo is doing. Yeah, and then we can use that to, like similar to a shader effector, which is awesome.
Yep. So that's where we need to do a bit of wrangling of the data, and yeah, and again, you can randomize the clone IDs and use that as your input color and so forth. So there are ways, quite a few ways to do that.
Yeah.
Now, S motion. Is there a tactic you can show in Cinefody regarding knitting animation? I think Houdini is better in this regard, and since Cinefody cannot handle detail things, I hope switch to Houdini. Number one, of course, you can use whatever software you want. C4D cannot handle the detailed things. That's inaccurate, I have to say. And my final response is that a lot of the stuff you see done knitting and stuff like that, a lot of people have done knitting effects. But a knitting effect per se is a very rough way to describe any of unlimited types of setups. Yes, we can do some really good knitting animations using, and people have done them using MoGraph and so forth. If you can provide me with some sort of sample video or something like that of how you would want that to work, we can potentially offer you some sort of solution.
Yeah, definitely depends on the knitting pattern as well, a lot.
The knitting pattern, how there's, I don't think there is something, unless it's extremely specific, that you can't do in Cinema 4D one way or another. And I just want to clarify here that the whole idea that Cinema 4D cannot handle detailed things and all that, that is completely wrong. Right? I have to disagree. Houdini is an excellent piece of software. It's a extremely good tool to do things, but we have extremely good capability as well. So yes, please, S-Motion, provide me with some sort of sample video, potentially, of what you would like to do, and I can be more specific. If it cannot be done at all or very easily and so forth, I will let you know.
I'm just showing
Yep.
our social handles.
Mhm.
So this would be a good way to reach out to us via social media. And then we can have a look at what you would like to create, and then maybe we can show it in one of the next shows.
Oh yeah, yeah. These are very good questions. What I would like to do is actively prove you wrong, right? And that will make both you happy and us happy. So challenging questions like these are always welcome.
We love a challenge.
Yeah, we do. We do love a challenge.
Yeah,
So let me see. Do we have 5 minutes?
we have 5 minutes. I have 5 minutes.
Okay, so a couple of things. I just want to address a couple of things that were questions through the Ask the Trainer. One question was in regards to Maxon moves and the blend shapes that Apple defines as the extreme blend shapes, 52 or 54 or something like that. These are proprietary of Apple Computer. Well, they're not provided, but they are provided in the, if you go to Apple's, let me just copy and paste in case, I'm going to paste it in the chat, and I'm going to share my screen very quickly. This is the page that deals with the face blend shapes. I've pasted the link. And if you go down here, you can see actually it gives you images when you click on these of what each of the blend shapes does, what's the neutral pose and what is the actual thing. So you could go and extract them. Now, there are third-party applications where they've created their own versions of these, and they are provided with the software. But as far as I know, Apple does not provide these for people to actually use as models. They're used internally to do the various types of conversions. So the second question, I'm not going to be able to reply totally in this stream. It's something I need to look into for the details. Was looping smoke animation, and I think it came from Sean. And Sean, is the H silent? Ahern or Ahern? And as far as looping smoke or looping anything, well, the idea, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do something totally different. I'm just going to use the doodle here. So doodle paint, because I want to illustrate something, because the question about looping stuff comes up very often. So the concept behind looping anything is the following. I have a block of animation, right? This is a timeline, right? Beginning and end. This block of animation, if it's something that can be faded in and out, then there's no problem with the looping. You go from 0 to fade in and then fade out and you loop again. But in many cases, you have a very particular set of things. Let's say you have a cube here, and this turns into a circle, right? So you want this to go from a square to a circle, and then sort of loop back to a square. One way of doing it, and that's the simple way, is reversing the sequence, right? If directionality is not your problem. So you can take the same block, invert it, and put it on the other side. You go from square to circle to square. So that will be one way of doing something like this. And then it loops again. But in cases like smoke and so forth, you have a different paradigm. You have an evolving situation where your puff starts like this and evolves up to this point here. So let's say this is the beginning and this is the end. Now, the question is, how do we expect this blend to work? And the generalized solution is that, well, you need to make sure that the object you have here, doesn't have huge discrepancies between these two things. And one of the ways to do this is to take whatever you want to animate, and in this particular case, let's say we have the puff of smoke here and a bigger puff of smoke here. You take this sequence and you basically copy it twice. You put it 50% offset before, and then 50% offset after. Okay, so this is, let's take it numerically, right? This is your 50th percentile of your animation, and this is 0. This is the 100th percentile of your animation, and this is the 50th percentile of your animation. What you're trying to achieve here is to create a blend between these two for this part, and a blend between these two for this part. And then if you cut your animation to the two common points, you will have some sort of looping animation. Now, this is the overall general concept of how, when we try to do something like that. But these kind of concepts, depending on the application, the specific type of smoke you want, how you want it to start, what are what does it look like, if it does any, you don't want it to jump, and so forth, depends on the situation. So just like with every other answer, if you have a particular type of smoke, the best way to do that is either to cache some smoke and send me the VDBs, or provide me with some sort of image. And because looping is something that comes up very often, and although the predominant concept is the same, that underpins every looping construct, it does have variations depending on what you're trying to loop. It's very, you will get jumps if you don't have some sort of smoothing at one point or another, right? That's
I have an example.
Yes.
If you want me
Screen,
to.
please.
So here is a looping pyro animation that I once created for a festival in Prague, Muzzle festival. Pretty cool one. So if any of the organizers is watching here, thanks again for having me. So we are in After Effects here, and as you can see, it's looping pretty well. The thing is, in this case, it's just some sort of text that I created inside of Cinema 4D and some smoke emitting from the text with a little bit of turbulence. So in this case, it would work fine, what Noseman just said. And that's exactly what I did here. So if you have a look at the input here, so this is the input, and as you can see, the first and the last frame, they are, wait, I'm not in the correct one. This is the footage. So the first one, come on, there we go. The first one and the last one are definitely totally different, right? So what I did was I had this, I made a duplicate, and I made sure that the start and the end point is just one frame apart so that I can then blend in between here. So if you just blend it by, let's say, using the opacity or transparency, you will always see that there is a blend. And the trick here, the reason why you don't see it so much, is because I used a fractal noise here as the blending. So let me just disable this one and maybe this one as well. So the way the second one is coming in, or the first one is going out, is this. And underneath is the other one, right? That's how I'm blending here. So that I'm not just blending one part at the same time, but this is the Luma mat here. So it's starting from white, and then it's doing this with a little bit of motion in there. But what I did actually, let's go to the effects. I have a little bit of contrast here that is animated to go from white to black, and the brightness, of course, to go from white to black, or yeah, from white to black. But what I also did is I animated the evolution here, and this is bringing, or this is giving me some additional movement here that is looking more smoky, right? So there is a little bit of movement in there to make it more organic. And then, yeah, when you blend the two, you just don't really see it if you don't know what to watch out for. So here there's a little bit of a section. There you go. That was the looping. Wait, I can show you again. There we go. But you don't really see it. So this is a good way of doing it. And then in the end, let me see what I did here. I think that's some optical glow. Yeah, with some radiate here. Not some, 100%. Exactly.
Yeah,
but that's how you can loop, like if once you rendered it. Looping it inside of Cinema 4D is way more difficult, if not, well, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's way more difficult. Doing that in post, when if possible, is definitely a good way. And what I just showed is one of the way how you can do it.
Yeah, the post would be the best way to do these kind of things. But if it's necessary to be some sort of 3D structure, there are ways to do that. But you need to imagine how, if you're working with surfaces, how one surface is going to blend into another, right? The example would be, just think of a very simple example. I want a sphere that starts from very small to become bigger, and I want that to loop. Well, that cannot loop. It's got one direction of motion. It goes from small to large. If you can go from small to large to small again, then you can loop it. But if you want it to be so big that it encapsulates the whole camera view, again, you can do that, because you don't have a point where the big one becomes small. It just disappears in infinity, stuff like that. So it depends on the concept you're trying to do. But overall, what Jonas showed would be the basis of doing a looping animation. You need that offset, and you need the blend, and then you find a part which is not from end to end, but somewhere in the middle, where that part loops pretty seamlessly. Now, let's see. We have this question by Bharat. What's the best way to learn C nodes, and why we want to learn it in the first place? My answer to that is, currently there's no real reason for you to learn C nodes unless you have, exhausted every single tool that Cinema 4D provides to you. There are currently, C nodes is more like a visual programming language. But if you're trying to make setups, a lot of the stuff, most of the stuff all the stuff we do is done using standard Cinema 4D tools. So my general advice is, unless you know how you can use the existing tools to their full extent, trying to jump to a different type of technology is not as efficient. Learning the usual tools, so MoGraph is much more powerful than most people think or have experienced with MoGraph. MoGraph has a lot of little secrets, and we present a lot of these in our streams and quick tips and stuff like that. So my general advice is, unless you have exhausted every single bit of Cinema 4D's classic tools, then, or if you're trying to do something very specific that would otherwise require a programmer's approach, then you don't need them, at least not yet. If there's something specific you're trying to do, you cannot do it with normal tools, and you think that you can do it using nodes, send me an example or something like that on Twitter, and I can give you a reply. But I like to investigate the market and what people are doing in various other software using nodes and so forth. And there's a lot of stuff that I managed to do with normal tools without the use of auxiliary tools and all that. So yeah, that will be my response to that. Learn the current tools, and if you exceed that, if you find the limit on that, then that will be a time for you to expand your knowledge into something else. Let's see.
And again, if you have questions, let me find this one here. These are our social handles, so reach out to us.
Yeah, my DMs are open for people. Be very specific with your questions, and if you're providing files, make sure that they don't have any other third-party things, renderers and stuff like that. Leave only the stuff that is necessary to exhibit the problem or what you're trying to do. One more, when I create a database in the asset manager, why can't I see it in the asset manager node tree on the left of the attribute manager window?
I can reply to that.
Please do.
Okay, so let me quickly. Oh, you did it as well. Okay, here we are. So let's say you want to create a new database, right? A new database is not a folder or not a category here. So what you see here are categories. You can have a database that that you own, that you have on your drive, but all the assets that you created are part of, or can be part of, the existing hierarchy. For nodes, for example, like geometry modifiers, that makes sense. So let me see if there are some that I did. Is there? Geometry modifier. Is my database? There we go. It's not. Oh, I moved it. Okay, I cannot find it at the moment. I moved it. However, I'm going to show you how you can create a database, of course. So databases, and create new database, right? And then let's just save this to the desktop. And maybe let's create a new folder. So this is my test database. Okay, I create that. And I open this. So now the database is already connected here. If you have a look at the databases here, test database is connected. I can have a look, or I can see it, or I can also make it invisible, or I can unmount by clicking here. So if you want to organize everything that you create within a folder,
Jonas, let me interrupt you. Why doesn't it appear in right where your mouse is? I think that is Andreas's question.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm coming to right now. So what you can do is you can right-click and create a category. And the category itself is also an asset. You can save this category to your new database. So let's call this test DB, right? And now it's in here. Now we have that. And everything you create can be in here. In here, you can even create more. Let me go in here, more categories. Let's say I want objects. Okay. I want materials. Okay. And so on. So now I have that here. And if I go back to the database, if I just don't show it, then it's also showing or not showing here in the tree. Let's create an asset, a very simple one. Let's say we're going to create an object that is called a cube sphere. And not many people have heard of it, but it is a cube sphere. And I can just go to my objects category here, and I can just drag and drop it in here. Cube sphere, database is testdb, category is objects. Okay, now I have my first object in here. This is how I can populate it. And as soon as I unmount or make it invisible, you can see everything is here or not. Another thing I can do is I can create another thing. Let's say a figure with a skirt. Where do we have the cone? There we go.
Skirt primitive, yeah.
So exactly, that's the skirt primitive. So that's the skirt. So that's my skirt figure, right? And I can also put it, for example, under uncategorized. Now, uncategorized is a category that will always be there if you have uncategorized stuff. But you can have things of, or like assets of many databases in there. So right now I would save it to my database, but I can still use another folder. And this can be anything here. It can be example scenes, it can be motion capture, it can be everything. If I hit OK now, you will find that asset in the uncategorized category, but it is still part of your database, right? So if I now hide my test database, all my folders are gone, but also in the uncategorized category, we don't see this asset anymore that we just created, right? So now it's back. So that's
Yep.
very important to understand that a database is not a category here. You can create your own categories. And in some cases, like if you want to create your own objects and materials and so on, and want to share your stuff with colleagues and so on, it might make sense to have a category structure here. But if you create, and I think that's something that you wanted to refer to, if you, for example, want to create a nodes modifier, like a geometry modifier, it does make more sense to save it here, because then when you search for geometry modifiers, you will just see everything in here, all the nodes modifiers, even the ones that you created. And then when you go to list view, for example, make this smaller, you have all the stuff you need in here, including your own assets. So both ways make sense. Think about when you create a database for which assets it makes more sense to have them in the existing category structure, and for which ones it makes more sense to have them in your own category structure. That's my advice here.
The note to myself is that the tree on the left is not databases, it's just categories. That's
exactly.
And I repeated it in my head because yeah, excellent. Couple more quick ones. And so Jedtown, what is the command to attach a skirt to the figure if doing animation with a figure, please? It's a bit of a vague question. If you're just going to move the figure up and down on let's say Jonas's screen, as you see it now, it's attached. But if you're talking about an animated figure and the skirt being a simulation and so forth, I would advise you take a look at the News University simulation series I did, where I show how you attach things to other things.
Another thing you can do exactly is just to place it in a hierarchy. Like in this case, it's a static one, so it might be very cool. But if you press C to make the figure editable, you have a lot of control here, including like this is the pelvis. Let's just make the cone a child of the pelvis, and then we could move the upper body separately from this, and also the legs and whatnot. So there we go. Right. So there are ways of doing that. In this case, it's not the coolest character animation, to be honest, but it works. All right. So I think we have it, right? Let me see.
I think so. Address asks another question on learn how to rig a character. Is there a university course on how to animate it? It depends what you mean.
So there is a university course about about setting up the rig, especially the. So we have multiple tutorials about it. I once created a quick tip about the Mixamo control rig when you want to modify animation or mocap animation coming from Mixamo. But if you want to use the other rigs, there is a pretty extensive tutorial series on the legacy Cineversity sites for the Toon rig. And the Toon rig is actually the most flexible rig template that we have. The thing is, like with every other aspect inside of Cinema 4D, when you use these templates, just give yourself the time, like half a day or so, to explore all the parameters, all the control objects, because of course you need to learn that rig in order to really use it. If you know your way around, same as like Cinema 4D, a rig itself is also just a, let's say, a user interface that makes, or that is there to make your animation workflow easier. But you have to learn that interface. So yeah, take the time, click every single controller that you have in there. And there are a lot of things to explore.
Well, one piece of advice is 99.9% of character animation is understanding the principles of animation and things that have nothing to do with software. That's 99.9%. The rest is just moving something when you should and in the amount you should, and pressing a button to record if you're doing forward kinematic, the rotations, if you're doing inverse kinematic, the position of the controllers.
Yeah.
But that will not make you an animator, and you will not do good animation unless you know the principles of animation. I know every bit of technology on how to animate something, and I cannot animate to save my life because I'm not a good, animator. Now, I was better when I was a kid, and I did those flipbook animations on my history books. That was my favorite one. Oh yeah, flipbooks, and it was interesting. But here's another piece of advice: when you're going down a road of doing something which is very technical and requires supplementary knowledge outside of the software, it's good to test your skills on something that doesn't include software. So get a bunch of paper or buy off your favorite online store a empty flipbook and make an animation. Because if you cannot make an animation using a flipbook, and when I say flipbook, it doesn't need to be 120 frames. You can actually make a flipbook with 3 pages, right? And the way they do it, that you put the pages, you put your fingers in between, and you sort of flip between these 3. If you can't get that to look interesting with just 3 poses, because the Cinema 4D or any software, the only thing it's going to do is create the in-between from those poses, you're going to be the one that's going to create the key poses. That's why we call it keyframing. I would suggest you check out the Animator's Survival Toolkit book, the 12 Principles of Animation from Disney book. Those are Stop Staring for facial animation. There are many books out there, but
Acting for Animators from Ed Hooks is also a good one.
Oh yeah. There's an enormous amount of literature out there that deals with these kind of things. And first, study those things. You don't need to go to school, although school will be good. But there are some fundamental things that make animation look much better just by applying these. If you go on your favorite search engine and look up the 12 principles of animation that were established by 2 Walt Disney employees back in the 40s. There's even a book about that you can buy. Read through those, and that will give you a very good idea of some of the not so obvious things, which you do see when you see very good animation, but that distills them down to these 12 principles. And as far as the buttons to click, you can ask about specific things and we can give you the answers. There's a lot of information on Cineversity and so forth. But if you want to go down the animation rabbit hole, start with a bouncing sphere. You know, you
Yeah.
have to be able to figure out how to make a bouncing sphere start from one part of your screen and make it bounce a few times with the proper squashing and stretching and accelerations and all that. And that only requires one deformer and just keyframes for the position. But they have to be at the right time, they have to be at the right pace, and so forth. So that is how you start, how you get a feel for the whole concept of animation.
Another tip that I want to share is definitely whatever you do, whatever you want to animate, shoot reference and to get timings right. Timings are more extreme the more cartoony your animation is supposed to be. But in general, shooting reference, especially when you want to dive into character animation, and character animation is difficult, but it's also a lot of fun. The moment when you rig the character and you animate it for the first time and you see somehow, okay, there's life in that figure that I just created, that's a very magic moment. And I definitely want to encourage you to try that out. But as soon as it gets to animating, definitely shoot reference, because most of the animations that I have seen from students who animated for the first time, like character animated for the first time, is that the animation was way too slow because they were using no reference, and then they had viewport feedback, which may not have been real time, for example. So there was no real way to really assess the timings of the animation. Definitely shoot reference. Then you can count frames. You can count the frames from pose to pose, and this way you already get a feeling of how fast actually animations sometimes need to be. Definitely do that. And something that I did wrong in the past, whenever you shoot that reference, make sure you set your camera to the same frame rate that you're going to use for animating. That will save you some trouble.
Yeah.
I've been through that, and it's not a bad thing because you just add or subtract 1 or 2 frames per movement or so, and then you are there as well. But you can make your life easier by just using the same frame rate. All right.
I think we need to close now. It's a bit. There are a couple more questions. I don't think we can get to these. Please email us at AskTheTrainer at maxon.net with your questions. Just Bharat, if you're a newbie and you want to learn, how to do more intricate things, I would say look into Python for now, because it will open a bigger horizon for you to do something that is useful in more contexts. And if you're a beginner, learn the standard tools. There's an amazing amount of power you have when you learn how to use MoGraph and Cinema 4D's standard tools. That's why I mentioned, if you are not a pro user that has pushed Cinema 4D to its limit, there's absolutely no reason for you to learn how to use scene nodes. And with that,
all right, let's close.
are you going to do the housekeeping, or do you want me to do it?
I can do it, no problem. Okay. Let me
over to
me. Hello everyone. So yeah, let's do the housekeeping here. I'm on the events page on the Maxon website. If you go to news and events, you can get there and you can find out about all the things that we are doing as webinars and events that we are attending live. And other than that, you can sorry, I was distracted. So here's where you find all the events that we are attending. If you want to catch up with the live stream, if you just came in late or you missed one, then you can go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel and find all the exciting recordings that we have there. Ask the Trainer, for example, one of my favorite shows demystifying post-production. Definitely have a look at mechanical rigging in Cinema 4D, which was amazing. You did a really great job there, Thanasis. At the moment, on Mondays, we have toon-style motion graphics as the topic, so that's also a pretty cool thing. Also, regarding animation, because some things are really timing critical and so on. If you are new to any of our applications, go to cineversity.maxon.net, and here you can find Getting Started series for all of our applications and a lot more. And then, if you are interested in becoming certified,
this is Noseman from the Maxon training team. Oops. And in today's quick tip, I'm going to show you how to paste screws. Yeah, I was bringing up the quick tip playlist to paste it, and it opened up the first video, so I'm just pasting.
All right.
Watch the quick tips. Sign up, subscribe, ring the bells. The quick tips. 4 minutes of amazing information. There you go. I posted.
Distraction part 2. Okay, so if you're interested in certification, the maxon.net/certification site is the place to go. If you are not interested in certification, still, this is a very good site to visit, because we have the certification topics on here. And the challenging thing in general is that you most of the time know what you know, but you don't know what you don't know. And this list here is pretty extensive, but it's also a very good reference of finding out the things that you might not know already and that you could learn. And then the last thing here is the AskTheTrainer exclusive wear store, where you can order 1 t-shirt for free and only pay for the shipping. When you enter that site, you have to type in a passcode. It's Toonie Graphics this month. And yeah, then you can order 1 t-shirt for free and only pay for the shipping. All right. And with all that being said, I think we are at the end of today's AskTheTrainer live stream. Thanks for attending. And thanks for all your great questions. If you have questions in the meantime, please hit us up on social media or write to AskTheTrainer@maxon.net. Okay, cool. That's it.
That's it. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.
See you.